So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Arc Logos. Today, I'm so excited because I have a really special guest. But before that, let me introduce myself. I'm one of your hosts, Anita Pinto Young. With me today are
Rose Tibere.
And Sherelle Wilson Morrison.
Right. So, I was saying that we have a really special guest here today, somebody who's close to my heart. Grace Addy, and I'll let her introduce herself a little bit more and tell us a little bit about herself. Over to you, Grace.
Hello, everyone. I'm Grace Padonou Addy, and what can I say? I'm here because of three wonderful, young, beautiful ladies of God that have asked me to be here to talk to people, to empower, to say whatever it is on my mind. I have to tell you, it's my first time doing anything like this. So you have to give me some leeway in terms of this. But hopefully, by the grace of God, it will, whatever I have to say will have something that resonates for everybody that listens to this podcast. So what can I say about myself? I mean, there's so much to say, and on one hand, there's so much to say, and on the other hand, there's so little to say. So, when you're going through a journey in your life, and you've got to the type of crossroads I've come to in my life, there's lots of lived experience that you can share. But again, when you look forward and think about what else exists for you to do, there's still so much more to do. Yeah. So, so thank you for inviting me to be part of you. Thank you for saying that I'm a special person to you. And, I regard all of you in the same way. And that's why, in fact, I'm here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I mean it when I say special, as in we've all worked together in the same organization. Mm-hmm. And I remember Grace, and we've talked about it before, where working together in the same local authority, looking around to see who's there that you can look up to. Because I think all of us have that. Mm-hmm. And I think the day when I spotted you and I thought, oh my gosh, you're a Black woman in senior leadership, that was, quite amazing for me. And in my head, I was like, okay, she needs to be my mentor. And you have inspired me. So I think that's what we want to talk about in terms of your career journey. Where did it start, Grace?
Oh, you know what? It's interesting when you talk about journey. I don't think I've ever been intentional about anything. But what I can say as a golden thread throughout my career is that I've had the favor of God throughout. Amen. And so whatever the intentionality I've ever had is about being better than what I was the day before or the year before or any other time before. Yeah. That's the only intentionality. But the journey has basically taken me in so many different directions, so many different countries, more than 3 continents in the world. So I've, my experience is, born out of one, a love of God and favor of God, but also just doing whatever, I think, I'm listening to often. I don't even think I'm listening to right things because sometimes I think I've just gone off course but the favor of God has always kept me, brought me back, but also has always guided me and always positioned me in such a way that that whatever I need and I want, I'm able to acquire it. Yeah. And, for that I'm always grateful. Yeah. Grateful for. So, I mean, if I had to talk about my journey in terms of leadership roles, I think, it would be really difficult to say there's a linear trajectory or a path that I took because I didn't have a particular path. In fact, one of the jokes I still make to myself today is, Grace, what are you going to be when you grow up? And this is after retirement. I'm saying this. So that's really funny because again, like I don't think there's been intentionality, but I've always taken one step at a time. There's many things or many opportunities I've declined over the years. There's other opportunities I've embraced, and the ones I chose to embrace are the ones I've sometimes felt that I was comfortable with, or I had a leaning towards, or I felt that I can offer something to the world. I think the other thing for me that's always been important is a willingness and a need to make a difference. I do not believe that God put me here just to occupy a space. And so every role I've taken has been about what difference are you going to make in this particular role that you're in? What is your mission? What is the vision that you have for a broader than yourself? And so I've always sought roles that I think are bigger than even myself, because I think, one of the things that people often say, wow, you speak really well. Every time I've met you on a webinar, I've met you speaking. And then I'll tell everybody, I said, you know what? I don't even like people. I only like computers. Computers are my friends. Chat GBT, anything like that is my friend. Computer. But you know what? God has put me in places where I had to be with people. I had to lead people. But I had to lead myself before I can lead people. So when Anita, when you talk about having representation as a senior Black woman, as a representative, I hear you, and I see you, and I feel you, in terms of, because most of the roles I've held throughout my life, I've been the only senior Black person.
Wow.
And whether I was in Canada or I was in West, or I was in, Europe, or I was in UK, I've always been been the only Black person there. Wow. And when I think about, and not only have I been the only Black person, one of the things that I've always been cognizant about is not only am I a Black person, I consider myself fairly intelligent. I think I'm, I'm there. Although I there's a path there that I always think I'm not quite good enough, that pushed me to even pursuing a master's at the age of 50, because again, that voice in my head that says, you know what, you still haven't made it yet. You still haven't done what you need to do. There's still more for you to do. And there's still always that continuous drive to be more than you are. But the positioning, as I said, is so important and is pivotal to be able to see people like yourself. Often I didn't see people like myself when I was going through my leadership journey. So therefore, I had to be that person for someone else, because I didn't see somebody that would. So when I was in a boardroom in Toronto, Canada, and I'm leading a project, a transformation or change, there were nobody else around me. I looked around and they were just wonderful white people, but then nobody else that looked like me, right? And not only that, I'm a Black person. I think we can all see that. But also, I'm a big Black person, so I'm not, so that for a lot of people that can feel intimidating, right? And in fact, there's a lot of judgment that comes, you're a Black person and you're strong, you're vocal, and you're a big person, so you can be intimidating. But it's about, how do you occupy that space, regardless of what somebody thinks about you? How do you occupy a space that says, I'm here for a reason and for a purpose. And so whatever that reason and purpose is, I'm going to do it regardless of what the wisdom of the world is saying, whatever the judgment of the world is saying. I'm not going to be concerned about you thinking about, well, I'm not size 16 or 0 or whatever. I'm here for a purpose. I have a job to do. And so I would think even what I believe has driven me also throughout my life is to be, and this is born out of mom and dad say, in order to be the best, you have to be academically strong.
Yes.
You have to, as I'm sure, as you three ladies can say, I'm
Yeah.
sure you've come from the parentage that says, that 95% is not good enough. So why didn't you get the 5? Why didn't you get the 100? What's missing? I grew up in that kind of household where parents were constantly saying you have to be academically driven, you have to go for more, and this is where I come back and say, even at 50, with all the success I got in my career, I felt I hadn't done enough. I've only got a bachelor's degree, multiple postgraduate certificates, lots and lots of experience and certification in different areas I wanted to be in. I was flourishing in different capacities in the change field, learning and development field, change management, transformational change. I was flourishing all over the world. Wherever I landed, I flourished. Right, whether it was in the private world or it was in the public sector, I flourished. And so I bring back the combination of the favor of God, and and also excellence. Being excellent in everything you do. Right. So I always sought to be excellent in everything I did, and so that opened paths in spite of the what other people will see as barriers, in spite of my color of my skin, in spite of the fact that I'm a big lady, in spite of I don't have triple PhDs or PhD. God always helped me to land in a place where I was able to influence influence in a positive way. And the most beautiful thing that I feel like I'm feeling now that I'm in this part of this time of my life is, when you look back and you have people that tell you, because you do what you need to do. And I feel in my life I've done what I need to do, and and I've done, hopefully, some people feel I've done well. Some people may think I haven't done enough, because when I compare myself, if I choose to compare myself to others, I haven't done a lot. So you talk about senior leadership. I could be a director, although I declined a lot of offers of directorship because I didn't feel it was what I wanted. So it's not that I couldn't go to that level. Whether it was here in UK or it was in Canada. I mean, I've been offered those positions, but there wasn't something that basically was pushing me, that was driving me and saying, that's what you want. So my pursuit has never been about a title. My pursuit has always been about the difference I can make. So what role will help me to make that difference. Right? And one of the things I think is important, I often say this to people who ask me about leadership or talk about, especially I talk about in the public sector capacity. When people talk to me and they're going through their pains or they're going through, they're celebrating successes, I said, in public sector and often even the private sector, as you move up the hierarchy of, and you go and you when I'm talking about positional power now and positional authority, positional influence, it's less and less about what you know. It's about who you know and how well you can do the politics of the organization. And I say the politics with a big P and the politics with a small p. You need to understand how to navigate the environment, the landscape that you're operating in, because it's less about, because as you move up in senior leadership is about how you lead people to deliver results. When you're in the lower echelon, I mean, you guys are social workers and you do different things, you have an end goal. You meet with your client, you ensure that the health and safety is met, and you have a specific thing. As you move up that food chain, is about how do you get others to be able to do what they
that,
need to do,
yes.
but also inspire them
Yeah.
to do what is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Because you know, anybody can make any, you know, you can say, well, if you don't do that, you don't get paid. So
Yeah.
that's easy to do.
Yeah.
But it's another thing to be able to inspire people to
Yeah.
want to do their best.
Yeah.
And to want to do your best, that's where I think leadership comes in.
Yeah.
Because if you are not a person that is willing to uplift and support your people,
Then,
you're
yeah.
not going to get the best out of people.
Yeah.
If you're not going to inspire them. Yes, you want to cut me off
Yeah.
here. This
Oh,
is
no, sorry.
it's good.
It's not-
I complain that I can't talk now. I'm talking too much. So go ahead,
Oh,
Rose.
sorry. I was just wondering, our viewers must be wondering, she's talking a lot about, worked in a number of different continents and that, and maybe wondering what kind of roles did you have and what leadership roles they must be, questioning and wondering, what did
Yeah,
you
so
do?
okay, so
Yeah.
if we start from North America, let's
Yeah.
start
Wow.
because
Yes.
I would say most of my educational life started in North America.
Yeah.
So I've had roles in the public sector
Yeah.
where I've moved from frontline level like yourself, and most of the time I always start in frontline levels. So I was a caseworker managing caseloads of 150,
Wow.
working
Wow.
with injured workers. So
Yes.
one of my first, I would say, most pivotal roles is being a vocational rehabilitation caseworker, where my job was to work with people that had been injured at work
Yeah.
and help them to reintegrate back into the workforce.
Yeah.
Some of them will be able to reintegrate because of their ability to recuperate from their injuries through medical technology, but a lot would not be able to. So it's about how do you help them to acquire the right quality of life so that they continue their quality of life. So I used to hold caseloads of 150, 200, working daily to work with workers. And that's where I would say my journey in terms of change really started.
Yeah.
And from there I moved on to I keep on talking, as you move further and you deepen your knowledge and your scope in whatever you do, you always ask yourself, okay, what is the fundamental thing about this role that needs to be done? How do I empower others? How do I build on where I am? So the next natural role was for me to move into how do you develop the best caseworkers that there was.
Yes.
So therefore I moved into training and development.
Wow.
Yeah.
So and then
Yeah.
I then took myself back to schooling. So
Yeah.
this after a degree, then I went back to school and say, okay, how do you do and what we call andragogy? How teach? How do you work with adults?
Yeah.
So I took myself back to Seneca College, got my certification in andragogy, and then start to look at vocational rehabilitation, get certification in that area. Again, this is what I talk about. Whatever you do, be the best that you can.
Yes.
And what that did by going back and getting those additional certification for the type of role I was operating in at that time, it then offered me opportunity to start to work in the college environment. So I became a lecturer.
Wow.
Because over a number of years, I became a lecturer in a college in Canada, and I was selected out of a number of people that were part of what I would call a team of all white. Again, myself as the only black person, and all white people all applying for the same role to be a lecturer in vocational rehabilitation at WSI, Workplace Safety and Insurance Board in Canada. And I was the only one selected out of a whole team of 10 people.
Wow.
So this is why I talk about the excellence, because you have to show up. You have to show up, but because obviously they didn't choose me because of my pretty face, right? Or anything else. So, but they're looking for who has the academic excellence, who has the presence, who had what they required in order to be able to, educate the rest of the people that needed to be trained up. So I started then, my role was then training other people to be the best caseworkers that they can at
Yeah.
the organization, but also started training across the province, what I would call the province of Ontario.
Yeah.
You know, training people within a faculty,
Yeah.
you know, as a lecturer within a faculty. And so then that took me on to, okay, what else is there to do? You know, I can't, I can't just, stop there. So I moved from there to corporate training. So
Wow.
from a specialized, so you,
Yeah.
what I talk about moving from a specialized training, then I basically became a corporate trainer,
Training, yeah.
and then start to develop other people, start to do design and development training. And this is where, again, I talk about continuous improvement and continuous development.
Yeah.
Because when I moved into corporate training, I had to learn, again, subject matters that were way outside of, my comfort zone and what I had been taught. So I had to move again and then build my my repertoire of additional skills,
Yeah.
additional knowledge. I mean, if you were to come to my place in my home, I think you can, if I had to put all the certification I have on the wall, they'll just be going on for, because everywhere I
Yeah.
went, when I was a young person, when I talk about young person, probably about your age, 30, 40,
Younger
ish
than
type
that.
of,
I was born in 1990.
okay,
She's 99,
okay,
yeah.
30, yeah, 20, 30, 40.
Yes, that's
that
right, Grace.
I pursued, academics was something I pursued,
Yeah.
and being excellent was something I pursued, and so anything I got my hand in, I had to be the best I can. And so that's been both what I would say a powerful thing,
Yeah.
but it's also been something that has caused me angst, but also caused other people angst. Because of my perfectionist nature,
Yeah.
I expect the same level from others. And that is one of probably the most prolific leadership challenges I would say I've had in my life.
Yeah.
Is that perfectionist, because mediocrity and grace do not go side by side. And so you cannot be on my team and be a mediocre person,
Wow.
because I will always be driving
Yeah.
for excellence, for you to be more.
Yeah.
But I will always at the same time be supporting you to be the best that you can, because what I'm looking for in myself, I'm looking for in others.
Yeah.
And I want others to also have that opportunity. So I moved, so I did a lot of things in Canada, and as I said from the beginning, nothing intentionally. And then one day I got fed up of everything. I said, I'm leaving all this, and I moved from Canada to UK. Just, I decided enough was enough with what I'm doing. I needed a new challenge. I needed, to do something else. I was born in the UK, but raised in Canada.
okay.
Yeah, so I was born in the UK, but never had any real experience in the UK. So it's time for me to get new experience, new exposure. Meanwhile, I had a daughter already at home in Canada, but, I was, how to understand myself. There's a journey to understand yourself, understand what you're about. And, and I started, before I left Canada, I started on a journey, what I would call a new journey of what I call organizational development.
Yeah.
All right.
And again, I then put myself back in school. This is where that took me to United States. I started training in United States to be a specialist in OD. Wow. And then I started getting training under a Buddhist monk who was an OD specialist, who was the first person that trained me in the field of OD. And then I went on to get my postgraduate certification in OD. Okay. But that journey, when I moved from, let's say, training and development and that sort of role, and moved into OD, I didn't know where I was going with it. I have to be honest. And, if
Could
so,
you
this
explain what OD is? Sorry.
organization development. So
Yes, yeah.
thank you for asking, because OD,
Yeah.
there's so many ODs,
Overdose.
overdose, and there's so
Yeah.
many interpretations, and
Yes.
and that's I think that's one of the aftermaths of working public sector. Everything
Yes.
is you put into an acronym, and
yeah.
we live by acronyms, which is not good, and then we just assume everybody knows what you're
Yeah.
you're talking about. But it opened up a new world. OD
Yeah.
opened up a new world, because what's OD? OD is about change.
Yeah.
And my whole life was about change, and is about how what was I going to do with this new field? At that time, that was in about 1990s. OD was still fairly new in terms of North America. United States has been there since the 60s. So I went to one of the oldest schools in OD, NTL. National Training Laboratories in OD. So it's been there for a while, but it wasn't something that was prolific and where that everybody knew. So it was a new field, it was a new area of development. And I thought, you know what, this is something new for me to do. And then I went on a different journey. So I went from here and then went on another journey. And then I started in that field and came here, and takes me back again to that favor of God. Got here. Within 6 months of landing here, I was recruited by one of the top consulting company, Capgemini.
Wow.
Here,
Oh.
as a management consultant, which is almost the second level in private consulting. I was hired, at the same time I was hired in Capgemini, I was also offered 2 other roles in 2 other consultancies.
Wow.
Just
Wow.
landing here from Canada.
Wow.
Didn't have a master's degree. All that I got is
Wow.
a bachelor's degree and lots of different certifications. I landed. Again, that role wasn't supposed to be for me, because I didn't fit the type. I'm not in a pinstripe suit and, size 0, and, so I'll tell you a funny story. That further illustrates this thing about, the favor, when it's all about favor.
Yeah.
And when it's not just about what you know, and it's about favor. So I came here, I was, looking for employment, as I arrived here, and it's funny, because obviously I had a solid CV, because I was getting lots of calls, for interviews. So Deloitte called me,
Wow.
Capgemini called me, some boutique a consultancy called me for interviews. I made it to each stage of the interview. At the end, I was at Capgemini, and another boutique organization, consulting company, offered me a role.
Wow.
Went for the final stage of Deloitte. This is a funny, story. Went to the final stage of Deloitte, and I've gone through all the stages. So the final stage was to meet the senior partner of the consulting firm. I went in this fancy building. Remember, I'm new to UK at this point. Went into this fancy building, all glass all over the place. I could see myself. I'm dressed in my blue suit and everything, but I know I'm not, I'm not, again, I was cognizant I'm not size 0 and everything. But at that time I hadn't, been, also, I wasn't thinking about what it looked like. Met with the managing consultant, the senior partner, met me at the elevators, and he looked at me, he shook my hand, and I knew that was it, this wasn't going to happen.
Oh dear.
He looked at me, it was immediate, this wasn't going to happen.
You could tell.
He from the manner he greeted me, he said, "You're Grace." I said, "Yes, I'm Grace." And remember, I'm at the final stage, so I've done I've gone through all the hoops, and it's just for him to sort of ratify that, I've got the role as a consultant. But from his face, I knew I did not fit Deloitte
The culture.
culture.
there.
Yeah.
I knew. The first thing he said to me, "You've got a presence."
Okay.
So, I was perplexed. You've got a presence.
What does that mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah. I've got a presence. Yeah, I'm a persona. I've got a presence and everything. And he shook my hand and we walked. I said thank you because, I don't know what he's referring to. So we went from there and we went to the room that I was supposed to do a final presentation and, for him. Then we sat down in this room. It was just himself, and it was supposed to be himself and another partner, but it was just himself. And he said again, you have a presence. So, okay, what does that have to do with what I'm here? What is that I have a presence? So I asked him, I said, well, do you want me, the last stage I was at, I was told I'm going to do a presentation. Would you like me to set up? Oh, I don't have the computer for you to do a presentation. I said, well, I brought my own laptop. So I brought my own laptop. So, I'm ready to do. So, okay. You kind of, sort of shuffling. I still remember his face. And so I did, I started to do my presentation. And I could just feel he was not interested. It's like, get through this really quickly so we could get. And then when I finished, I said, do you have any questions? You really have a presence.
Again, 3 times.
Yes. You really have a presence.
Yeah.
I said, okay. Again, like I said, totally new to UK at that point. I said maybe it's a terminology, it's a nuance in terms of things that are said in UK that I don't know. Well, I mean, that's another joke about coming to UK and the language. I swore you guys don't speak English because when you
I'm not English.
you don't speak because when you're Canadian and you speak English, we intonate. We don't eat our words. And here. Yeah, I came in and I was trying to understand different things. Anyways, so that aside, that was the first time I would say where I would say I met overt racism. But an overt, bias towards my size.
Yeah.
Because now that 20 years later, and I'm now reflecting on it, and I said, that's the only thing he could be talking about. My side. But I'm sure it probably was even less racism because, by this time they would have known I'm a black person because I've gone through several stages. You would have known but I was not the fit for Deloitte. So this is, but at the same time, talking about the favor of God, 2 other Capgemini and a boutique consult were offering me a role that was even paying more than Deloitte.
I hope they
was paying. Okay, so this is where I say, you know what? Nobody should ever be discouraged because what is for you will be for you. And God will make it happen.
Yes.
Right? So when that door closed and that door was supposed to close, because you know what? If he hadn't, said whatever he said and had hired me, I probably wouldn't have lasted 1 minute. Right? Because what he was showing me, and it goes back to what Maya Angelou says, when somebody tells you who they are or shows you, believe them. Often we do not want to believe what we're hearing, what we're saying. We say, no, I'm sure that's not what I heard. No. Believe it. But I mean, in my case, I didn't understand what I was hearing. But that stayed, imagine, it's more than 20 years now. And I can still repeat the words. You have a presence. Well, I hope I have a presence, and I hope my presence gives me the agency to be the best I can be and to give power. And, one of the things I say, to give truth to power. And that's another one of my motto, give truth to power. And irrespective of whatever is, in front of me, truth to power will always be important to me. But after saying that, you cannot say truth to power, but not be ready to bear the consequence of saying that. Rose, I've gone in a long about way. I mean, the question. So I know you probably thought I'd forgotten the question about, the leadership roles.
Yeah.
So I've gone from, working Capgemini in private consultancy, then came here and started working in public sector mostly, moved up again. I always start from the bottom. Because there's something about me, and again I believe this is God that says, in order for me to promote you, you need to understand what the people underneath you are feeling are doing.
Wow.
So he never puts me in a position where I start at the top. Every role I've had in my life, I've started from the grassroots and worked up.
Wow.
Even with my last role in the last public sector I was in, basically I came there as a consultant, a change management consultant. After leaving Capgemini, came there as a change management consultant, then started in OD, moved from OD into change management, then became a manager. From a manager, became head of service at the point that's where you met me.
Wow.
Right? But throughout that trajectory, whether it be here in the UK or it be in Canada or even West Africa, God has always placed me in a place where I understand the plight of the people at the bottom of the food chain, so that when I move up the food chain, I do not forget. And I do not forget to understand about the empathy that I need to have.
Yes.
Because, and this is why one of my motto is treat everyone with kindness.
Yes.
Because you don't know, what they'll be tomorrow. But even if they're not going to be any tomorrow, they have everybody that you meet in your life has a lesson to teach you.
Yeah.
And, and you have to look at it like whether it's a janitor that's coming to clean your desk in the office, or is the person that is cleaning the toilets. And there's there's each of those things, opportunities, interaction, take them as teachable moments. Because they will give you a perspective on even the environment that you work in that you will not have seen. I've learned so much from those who I've said hello to that are cleaning toilets. And they, even the last place I work, they'll tell me what's going on in the first floor, what's going on in the second floor. Do you know who's complaining about this person? Do you know? And as an OD specialist, what's my role? To have the ears and eyes of the organization.
Yes.
And so some of these people are the ones that'll give me the eyes, because I don't have eyes everywhere.
No.
And so, but if I was like this with everybody, or I thought I'm better than anybody, a lot of information I wouldn't get. Or if you walk around like you're better, people won't talk to you. People won't gravitate to you. People won't give you information. So so important for me, maybe not for other people, that in my leadership walk, as I walk in leadership and I move from even like head of learning and organizational development as the last role I had in the public sector. But again, I was offered more senior roles than that. I was offered directorship in, last organization I worked at, which I declined because it was not for me. And it was not going to fulfill the purpose, even though I wasn't clear about the purpose. And that's what you see. And this is why I keep on coming back to, you may not be clear about the purpose, but God is clear about the purpose.
Yes.
God is clear about the purpose that you're there for. And I knew my purpose, putting me in a position of influence in the last organization was to be able to mobilize my people.
That's inspiring.
As part of my role.
Yes.
I'm there to mobilize everyone. but I'm not everyone.
Yeah.
I am Grace, and I am a black person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm a black person, and I'm there to operate on behalf of anyone that feels marginalized,
Yeah.
which is a mantra I've held since, my early days when I was working with injured workers, because I feel like that's what God purposely put me in that role, to see the plight of the marginalized.
Yes.
Whether it's because you're injured by accident, or you're injured by mental health, or just health wise or whatever, God has put me in that position that I can understand, I can empathize, and therefore it's easier to be inclusive.
Yeah.
It's easier to walk the talk. So when I talk disability, I'm not talking disability from an arm's length perspective. I'm talking about disability from a home place. I'm talking from a place where I believe
Yeah.
in everyone and in everybody's ability to do something and be someone. And that has, and again, that has just been so important for me. I mean, to point to, I think 2001, I won a Diversity and Inclusion Award.
Wow.
And then I was nominated for other diversity awards because, for me, speaking truth to power was important. And giving, as you said from the beginning, being representative for my people, so that somebody can see that, you know what, there are people that are up there that I can look up to, that I can ask something for, that can make a difference in my life. Those people who talk about representation doesn't matter, nonsense. Nonsense. I would say once upon a time I might have come from that school of thought. But I know the difference that it makes when you have influence and you have the ability to shift mindsets and to shift, and you're working with executives and you can make a case. Often, most of the times when you're working with marginalized people, you have to make a case. And if you are not strong in your own self, and you're not clear about your own purpose, and you're not clear about who you are, and you're not excellent in what you do, it's easy to what I call be poo-pooed.
Grace, you are so good. Like I wish I brought my notebook.
I know.
You're just coming up with so many golden nuggets, and I'm hearing a lot about excellence and some of the skills that you've obviously brought into your positions within the roles that you've obviously overseen. Just out of curiosity for all of us and just our listeners, what other skills, or what does excellence look like? I think,
Excellence is being the best version of you can be, whatever that is. But understanding where your gaps are in relation to what you need to do. And willingness to ask for help to fill that gap. Because if you're not willing to accept that there's a gap, and all of us have gaps, it doesn't matter how, even the person that has a triple PhD, there's always a different lens you can look at the world from. Right? And as long as you're working with people, I mean, all of you are social workers, as long there's a different lens you can take any problem from. Right? And is the choice about how you want to look at the world. But I would say, if you are not open to feedback, constructive feedback, even when you don't think it's good feedback, always take whatever feedback you get, right? And look at it, explore it. So anytime somebody gives me feedback, I do the thing my dad always taught me to do. I do this, okay? Dad always say, when you point a finger, right? Look at 3 that are pointing back at you. So when you want to blame that person for whatever is going wrong with your life, look at these 3. Make sure that those 3 are properly aligned and taken care of. And if you make sure that those 3 are okay, and you're still doing this, then you can stand your point. Then speak your truth to power. But do this first.
Yeah.
So look at these 3 points. So in other words, you look once here and 3 times here.
Yeah.
Look 3 times here and 1 time here.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what, whether you think is a good manager, a bad manager, whatever. Look at the feedback, because they are looking at the world from a different lens.
Yeah.
The lens I was looking at the world from when I was a worker or OD, a rehabilitation specialist, versus a manager, versus head of service, versus a potential director, areas. The lens I'm looking at the world from are different.
Yeah.
Because, one of the ways I look at it is when I was down here, I looked at the world from this.
Yeah.
When I moved up to manager, I had to look at this. When I moved to head of service, I had to look at this.
Yeah.
And when I had, if I moved up to be director, I had to look at the world from this.
Yeah.
Often people forget that, when I'm making a decision, when a senior leader is making a decision, they don't, sometimes they miss some of this, but they have to look at the world from here. And another way to look at it, I'm looking at it from a view, a high up view. So I'm looking at this world, I'm looking at, there's Rose, there's Sherelle, there's Anita, but those are just 3 people. I've got to look at 1,000 people.
Yeah.
So if you think about somebody that a chief exec in a role or director, they have 500 people, 700 people, 800 people to look at. They're not going to remember a Rose, an Annette, or the exceptional ones will, but how you show up is going to be about, that's really important, because it doesn't matter that somebody nominates you. You have to nominate yourself. There's a Nigerian saying that there's sometimes in life where, you don't have to wait for somebody to, they said the lizard congratulates itself. Its head is always going like this. And it's not waiting for somebody to congratulate. So there's sometimes you're going to have to congratulate yourself.
Yes.
But then there's sometimes you need to also humble yourself.
Yes.
And say, you know what? I may know this, but think about it. The manager knows this, and the director knows this, and, somebody else knows this. And so maybe there's something I'm not seeing. And often we miss that, and we get ourselves in all kind of flux and conflicts.
Yeah.
Guilty?
Yes.
We're all guilty.
Yeah.
Right? And that's and it's important to everybody to hold up their hand and say we're all guilty. But it's important, in leadership, that no matter where you are, for me, at least what has been important for me, is that whether I'm here, or I'm here, that I do not forget the journey that I've taken,
Yes.
right? And what people, when I was here, what I was feeling, when I'm here, what I was feeling and doing, when I'm here, what I'm feeling and doing, not to forget, but always to incorporate it into how I make decisions. I incorporate it into how I think about the world, how I think about people. One of the prayers I have, every day when I was, leadership, I wake up in the morning, I say, God, bless every member of my team.
Wow.
And bless their families.
Wow.
And then right after that, I say, God, give me clean hands, clean mind, and a clean heart
Yes.
towards my staff and my organization.
Wow.
I used to start every day with that. Don't always get it right, but you know what? But when that is a mantra you stick to, God will always be whispering. Remember what you said to me? Remember what you said to me? That you're gonna have a clean heart, clean mind, and clean heart. doesn't mean that you sometimes you're not going to fight a battle.
Yeah.
There's sometimes you have to fight battle, but do this thing that I told you before.
Yes.
Before you fight that battle,
Yes.
make sure that you're standing, strong. You've really, really done that homework
Yes.
of doing that introspection
Yeah.
of where you're coming from,
Yes.
and be prepared. This I can't say this song. Be prepared to accept the consequence
Right.
if you choose to speak truth to power,
Yes.
because it's not always going to be welcomed,
Yes.
and often is not. Sometimes it's not about even speaking truth to power, but how do you speak truth to power? Is often.
It's the
But,
how.
and the how often, I always say, we communicate on so many levels and so many different things every day. I always say, right message, right timing, right tone, right message. Wrong timing, right message, still wrong message. So you can have the right message. You may have the right thing to say, but if your timing is wrong and your tone is wrong, it's wrong.
Wow. That's amazing.
And that's sometimes we forget that. You're saying the right thing, but what's
But how
what's the
it's really
delivery?
coming
What's the delivery?
Yeah.
And what's the timing? Some people, most people, because you hear conventional wisdom that talks about timing, about delivery all the time, but people don't talk about timing a lot.
Yeah.
Because if you're telling me about something I did 10 years ago, and you're trying to, and I can't even recollect that I even did that, and now you want to now give me feedback about it, you can have the right tone and right delivery. It's not going to have any effect on me.
Yeah.
No.
So, Grace, I mean, I have maybe one or two other questions. Last question. But you mentioned about turning down offers to be a director. And it's still in my head because I know people are going to think, but why? And I heard what you said about it being about, it's not a part of the purpose. So I wanted to just ask you, how easy was that, and how would you encourage people to say? Because most people would say, but it's a higher role. I'm being paid more. Why would I turn it down? But what advice would you give to people around that? And another question, or not even question, I wanted to probably touch on as one of our final things about some of the work you've done in public sector around things like setting up the staff race advisory group, Black on Board initiative. Because I know sometimes you play it down because you're humble, but I know how much you've done. So about the directorship post first, and then finally about some of what I know you've done in helping people to develop.
Okay, never take a position because of money. Is the first. That's my first guide. Don't take a position because of money. You need to think about what's the impact this position is going to have on you. Right? You need to think about, okay, is it going to allow me to do everything else that I have to do? What's the impact on my quality of life? Yes, I can, and is it going to give me a voice that I currently don't have, that I think I need to have for something else I need to do? Right? And how much of it is it going to take away from me versus is going to give me? You have to think about life I think of it in terms of deposits and withdrawals is another way to think about it. How many deposits are you going to get out of the role that you get? Deposits obviously blossom, you generate wealth from deposits. If you're constantly withdrawing, good luck. You'll be depleted very quickly, right? So for me, it was at a stage in my life that I asked the question, what is this going to offer me that I needed, that what the current role wasn't going to offer me? And is it going to detract from what I want, what I needed to do? And what is the impact on my quality of life? And you know what? Sometimes, we chase the money, and you know what? and it will destroy you.
Yeah.
It will destroy you.
Say that
Because-
again.
Yeah.
So do not chase the money. Chase the purpose. Chase the mission. Be passionate about. For me, I've always, if you interview me about my role, I'm passionate about the field of work I'm in, because it's about transforming and changing lives.
Yeah.
Is that so? You talk about, what's the work I do. Everything for me is about culture change, about changing lives, impacting lives in a positive way. So whatever I've taken on. So in the OD capacity, for example, what are the role? I'm, working in performance management, it's about development, training and development, doing transformational change, basically working with Black on Board, different types of programs to uplift different segments of the organization, establishing staff networks. So, for example, most people don't know, I established the staff networks in Croydon Council, since
Equality
2014.
Network,
yeah.
I established the talks that you guys do on a regular basis. I established them. I brought them into the council. Why? Because I wanted to give people opportunity to connect with senior leadership, people an opportunity to have a voice.
Yes.
And I created, and wonderfully, the senior executives embraced it. So the Tea Talks
Yes.
that are
Yes.
what I understand still going, and Barbara Grant is still
Yes.
leading on those Tea Talks. The purpose of bringing that is to give voice.
Yeah.
The staff network was again to give a voice to marginalize. But one of the things, if you listen to me in one of the board meetings I've entertained, I said the place I would rather be, however, is that staff networks only exist for social networking, period. It should, if you have a mature organization that's well developed and is operating on fair and equitable principles, you do not need to have staff networks that need to bring their concerns to senior management, because it will be mainstream.
Yeah.
You do not have to have groups. So my goal, for example, I used to talk to senior management and say one of the goals was expanding staff networks. I was often say to, senior management, that's not my goal as head of service. I said, my goal is to mainstream equity, fairness in the organization, so that these staff networks, the only purpose they are there for is to enjoy themselves,
Yeah.
to socialize, network, not to bring grievances to the attention of an organization. A mature organization. So that's the if you are a authentic OD person, and you want, and you're looking for the best for your organization, the best for your organization is that inclusion is part of everyday business. It's not an adjunct. It's not something that's adjacent. It's not something that's add-on. It's part of how you do business.
Yes.
To get there is going to take a lot of years. It's not going to happen overnight. So for me, the opportunity, Croydon Council gave me the opportunity in my role to be able to lead and create
Yes.
a lot of those opportunities for the marginalized. But my wish for all public sector organizations, all organizations in the world, is that we have a world that is just, is fair, and is equitable.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel that we need to be working towards. So whatever little we can do, and what I consider whatever little I was able to do in my capacity in my last role, glory be to God for it.
Thank you so much. Any final questions, ladies? We could listen to Grace
Listen, I was
all
about
day.
to say.
I know,
Have you ever
I
thought
know.
about doing voiceovers? Your
Oh
voice
my
is
gosh,
so
Cheryl.
soothing. I'm just listening to your voice and I'm like,
Yeah.
you'd be good at audiobooks and things like that. Future consideration,
Sher-
Grace.
Cheryl is funny. Cheryl, is interesting that you say that because somebody said that to me about 5 years ago. They came to, they were, I think they, you know how the Korean Council they have these sales day,
Yeah.
and this lady was selling different books, and she said, would you consider doing voiceovers? And you should Google.
Wow.
And I remember even my early days. I remember in university, a professor came up to me and said, "Do you sing?" I said, "You don't want to hear me singing. That's one thing you don't want to hear." And all black people can't sing. I'm sorry. It doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
I said, but he said, "You have this voice that would be wonderful, as a voiceover."
Yeah.
And you know what? Who knows? Like I said, for me, now my new chapter in my life now is I'm working in a consultancy but my new title now I will call is the new title is grandma, and I'm cherishing it, and so I'm looking at transitioning to Toronto to be with my grandchildren, and especially my youngest, who's Majesty. And Majesty is 6 years old. And now when Majesty calls me and he says, "Grandma, you didn't answer the phone." I said, "Okay, Majesty, I'll answer the phone next time." He said, "Grandma, I'm the boss now." And I said, "Yes, Majesty, you're the boss."
Yeah.
And he'll give me this grin that starts on one ear to the other. And you know what? That's what brings me joy now.
Lovely.
That's what brings me joy. And so sort of my final words, to anybody is funny. I started off this discussion telling you that I don't like people. I don't like computers. I said that. Obviously, it's not true. God has put me here for a purpose. I'm still trying to figure out what that purpose is. But in hopefully my own little way, I'm able to impact people in a positive way and give them hope, and that they can look at me, as you said, Rose, and say, "Well, if you, why not me?" Right? If you can do that, why can't I do it? Because we all can. And so, in reflecting about what's the last thing I would like to leave this discussion with, and I thought, so I went on GPT, right? And I started to type in my thoughts. I said, "Chat GPT, these are my thoughts. These are the final thoughts I would like to leave this podcast. Come up with something
it
nice
so
for
good.
me. Take these words and come up with something nice for me." And it's interesting. It came up with it. Given everything, because I just typed in lots of stuff, and it came up with a magical number of 7 areas, and the importance of 7.
Wow.
In biblical terms, right? The perfect number.
Yeah.
And I thought, God, hear you talking again, right? Because I wasn't calculating what I was typing in. I just typed in, right? And this is what it gave me. In terms of put God first in everything. Let your career be anchored in faith. And when you have the challenges that you have, go back to your faith and say, "God, I give it to you." And listen to that still voice that gives you. Next thing is that, and I've said this one, bless the people who work for you. And bless the people who are, even those ones that you think, "Oh my God, I wish I never saw that person again." Or that person is a worse person. Bless them. The word of God says, "Bless everyone and let me take any vengeance I need to take.
Yes.
That's how it is easy to say. It's hard to do.
I know. I know.
It's easy to say, it's hard to do. But the more that you're prayerful about that, but it's about supporting whoever it is that God gives you to work with. The other one is pray daily for a clean mind and clean heart. This one. So these are the things I practice in my leadership, right? And don't always get it right, but it's, mantra. Treat everyone with kindness, whether it's a person that's cleaning the toilet or somebody is a chief exec. Treat them with kindness. And it's easy to, lash back when somebody does something to you. And you know what? Again, don't always get it right. Put up my hand. But we need to strive. That's how you make a difference. Do everything to the best of your ability. I think I've said that.
Excellent.
Yes.
And always be open to learn.
Yeah.
Without learning, there's no growth.
Yes.
And you must grow,
Yeah.
or else you become stunted and don't develop in life.
Yeah.
And the sixth one he came up with, this one is important, and this one was pivotal, but I'm not going to. I think I've come to the end of it. I said I wouldn't talk much, but I'm now talking
you
too
have
much.
you have another minute.
Compete only with yourself.
Okay.
I've learned a lot of lessons about this one because conventional wisdom says you're competing with others. Whether you're going for a role or you're going for whatever. I've never competed with anybody. Even in roles that I've applied for, other people that are applying for the same role, I share information with because I believe I only compete with myself.
Yeah.
Only compete with yourself. Like I said, conventional wisdom, and especially if you're in the private sector, you said, no. I remember going for a job with Gallup-Poll. They said, they didn't offer me the job because I said I only compete with myself. They said, no, we don't want that. You have to be, we have to be competitive because in the private consulting world, in order to make partner, so there's about 10 or 20 people vying for one position. So they see as you're competing with others for that one position. I still say you compete with yourself. Be a better version of yourself than you were yesterday. And and if you're starting from a standpoint of excellence,
Yes.
then if you're competing with yourself and you're truly excellent, you can't go wrong. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what leadership books they tell you about competing. And then the last one, this is so critical and again hard. Wake up every day being grateful.
Wow.
Being grateful for the fact that you have a job.
Yeah.
The fact that somebody is relying on you. So you guys as social workers, there are people out there that need you. Families that are looking up to you, that need your support, your empathy, your kindness.
Yeah.
And if you're not grateful for even that God allowed you to have that position that you can help them, and you're grateful that you have power over them, it's a wrong place to start. Wake up every day with gratitude and be grateful for everything that God has placed in your hand and treat it well. Wow. It's very important for me.
Amazing.
Great way to end, isn't it?
And we are so delighted to have had Grace with us.
Absolutely.
And she pretends that she can't talk.
No. I know I can talk, but I didn't know I could do this formula. I've never done this kind of formula before. I can talk. There's no two ways about it. I can talk. Wow. God has always put me in positions where I have had to talk.
Yeah.
Not that I want to talk, but He's put me in a position where I've had to talk. So, I mean, I've spoken to thousands. I've been on stage with thousands. So it's not, I'm not afraid to talk, but I'm a true introvert, which most people don't believe. So I like my solitude.
Yeah.
I cherish my solitude.
Yeah.
And it takes wonderful young ladies like yourself to bring me out to say, but I do it because hopefully anything I say, hopefully it makes a difference and it makes the world one place a little bit better than it was tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Grace. And it's been a really inspirational episode.
Absolutely.
We've learned so much. And we also hope that our listeners will learn a lot as well. I mean, there's so many food for thoughts that I thought, oh my gosh, it's made me rethink a lot of things.
Yeah.
And it's going to make me go back and listen again and think about myself in terms of my own career journeys and ambitions. But thank you so much, Grace. And to our listeners, we remind you to like, share, comment, subscribe, and look out for our next episode. That's a wrap.